Hello, everybody, and welcome to our PowerTips Live. My name is Joel Bryan, and I'm the Global Director of Post-Sale Support, Documentation, and Services here at Legrand for the Raritan and the ServerTech brands. So today's session, we're going to learn how to update the firmware and how to regenerate a new self-signed SSL certificate. And walking us through today's feature is going to be Brandon Eaton, who is one of our post-sales product support specialists. He's in Reno, mainly supporting the ServerTech PDU brand. Following the walkthrough, we will open it up for questions. And as usual, if you have other issues, it's probably best to email our tech support or give us a call, and we'll certainly get on the phone and try and resolve those issues for you. Okay, so with that, I would like to hand it over to Brandon. Brandon?
Hello, everyone. As Joel said, my name is Brandon, and today I want to cover the procedure for updating firmware on our Pro Series PDUs, as well as a few additional steps which would be necessary depending on the version of firmware which you're updating from. These additional steps are computing new SSH keys to update security and generating a new self-signed factory certificate, which will allow the usage of HTTPS access on modern browsers. The Pro Series products that we'll examine are going to be the Pro 1 and Pro 2 units. The Pro 3X, which has just recently been released, will be upgraded differently, and as such, we should probably have a training webinar regarding that in the future. This upgrade, or the firmware upgrade, can be done a few different ways. And I'll go through each one a little bit further on once I get to some links inside of our website here, which has instructions. But today I'll be covering using Windows, SFTP, and the native web interface GUI, which would be using HTTP or HTTPS. Also, I will demonstrate the procedure of generating a new SSL certificate using the PDU interface and the command line interface, and the same thing for computing new SSH keys. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, and if you direct your attention to our website, which is servertech.com, and you're more than welcome to follow along with me here, you'll want to just head over to the support tab, which you'll find in the menu here up top. And under support, there is a menu called firmware downloads. And if you open the firmware downloads page, you'll see that there's a few options here. Of course, at the top, we have our newly developed Pro 3X. And as I mentioned, I won't be covering anything regarding that today, as it uses a different interface and a few other things. We'll mainly be focusing our attention on the Pro 2 and Pro 1 series units. You'll see there's a few different options here for you to click on between switched and smart units. Fortunately, with our Pro Series units, both of these are actually the same firmware file, so it doesn't matter too much which one you click on for the Pro units. It does differ if you're using something older, like our CDU generation, but those are now being phased out and are end of life, so if you have any questions on those, like Joel said, please just reach out to us. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this switched rack PDU firmware. And this will take us to a whole nother screen here with some options and some buttons to click on. On the left, once again, is information regarding our CDU generation of PDUs. So we'll just ignore that for today. However, on the bottom left, you can see there is a button for sign up for firmware notifications. This will actually allow us to get your information, including your name, company, email, and things like that, and put you on a list so that you're notified whenever we do release a new firmware. I think this is important for everyone to do. That way they can stay up to date, especially with the the changes in security and things that are going on. So now that I've touched on that, I'd like to go over here. Of course, at the very top here, we have download Pro version 80s.bin. You'll see the Pro 2 and Pro 1 tags on there. This is the link that you would click to download the firmware. So if you are following along, you can go ahead and click that now, and that will download the firmware, as you can see down here. It's easiest to put that somewhere where it's easily accessible, especially if you're planning to upgrade firmware using SFTP, since you do need to put the directory path. However, most I would assume probably going to downloads or things like that. So now that we have that, that's the first step in upgrading the firmware for these Pro units. Next, I'd like to just highlight a few items below here. This next one is showing, it's a zip file, and it basically includes the version history document as well as the bin firmware file. One thing I would like to note on here, which I have seen cases come through with this before, is if you do download this, please do not try to upload the zip file to the PDU. You will get an error and it won't work. We have seen that happen a few times. It's a simple mistake. Just make sure that you unzip and export the firmware file itself. Next over is the version history. So if we click here, this does give us all the firmware revision notes for the releases going all the way back to the beginning of Pro. We're currently on, like I said, version 8.0S. This was released in June and is considered a critical security patch. So if you have any units that you're thinking about now that do not have 8.0S, I would strongly recommend that you do upgrade, as we do this webinar or after. And again, if you need any assistance, please let us know. And if you scroll down, like I said, it will go through all the different version notes. I will mention a few other versions today regarding the SSH keys and the certificates. So if you'd like to come back and kind of just look at those versions and see what they included, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So we'll go back to here now. So back to the firmware download page. The next button I'd like to click on, I think, is a great resource for everyone. And if you are can't upgrade the PDUs right now, but you may be further in the future, you're more than welcome to watch the recorded version of this webinar. Or another great resource is to click the upgrade instructions here. And so once you open this, it's going to open a technical note that we've developed for our Pro series. And it basically just goes over, first downloading PDU firmware from the website, which is what I just went through, as well as the methods for upgrading our Pro Series PDUs. So today, the methods that I'm going to show on our webinar here is method 1, upgrading PDU firmware using HTTPS or HTTP through the web interface. And method 2, upgrading PDU firmware using SFTP client to put the .bin file to the PDU. Method 3 is actually a method where you point the PDU to a an FTP client, or an FTP server on your network. And the method 4 is upgrading the PDU using automated bash scripting. So both of those options I'm not going to go over today. Method 3, I know a lot of people have moved away from using FTP because of security reasons, and bash scripting is kind of ambiguous depending on the scenario and the environment. But like I've said before, if you need assistance with either of those, please do not hesitate to reach out. And just scrolling down just to take a peek at this document, you can see it's pretty much almost exactly what we're walking through. So I think this is a great tool for anyone who wants to run back through here and just kind of look at the different steps and methods to update the firmware. All right, and then so the last two things that I'd like to note on this page are going to be, here's an example here of bash scripting for the firmware update. So if that's an option that you're looking to try but are a little unsure of where to start or just need an example, this is a great link here, and that'll download the script for you. As well, here on the right, there is a set of instructions which will tell you, how to edit the script for protocol, IP address, all that kind of stuff. So definitely some great links and resources here for everyone to use. So with that being said, I'd like to move on to the next portion of the webinar, and that will begin our firmware upgrade part. And so what I have is I have logged into one of our Pro 2 Century switched PDUs. This PDU, as you can see up here in the top, is running firmware Century Switched PDU version 8.0Q. So this would be a great PDU to upgrade to 8.0S. And I'll show you, it's really quite simple to do through here as well as through SFTP, but we'll go over each one. So on the left over here, you're gonna have some different menus. Overview, you have the system, the monitoring, the control, the configuration. We're gonna wanna click on configuration today. And the configuration menu is going to bring up, a bunch of different things that are able to be configured, whether it's, the network or access, and then you have a bunch of other things on the PDU that we've gone through on different webinars. But today we're going to focus on files. And once you click on files, you'll see the instructions up here. You can upload firmware or system configuration files. We'll ignore the stuff down here. This is more for configuration. All we really need to worry about is uploading that .bin file. So if you head over here and you click choose file, you'll want to just go ahead and find the file in your PC. As I said, I have it here on the C drive, and so I will click on that .bin, the Pro, make sure it's Pro version 80S, and we'll open that. And then we'll click upload. Now, once we click upload, you should see here where it says upload in progress, please wait. This should blink green for a few seconds here. If you see anything else such as error in red or something like that, I would check to make sure the file is correct, the PDU that you're trying to upload it on is correct, all those kind of things. And make sure that, the firmware upgrade is the one that you want. If you're having issues, please reach out. We can definitely assist and take a look at it for you. So once you get that and it's going and it says uploading, you'll come to this page, and this page is basically just telling you that it's restarting. Usually these firmware upgrades, I'd like to say, take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes or so. And just a quick note, and we'll see this later on as well, the restarting here is just restarting the network card. I want everyone to understand that in doing this, you're not restarting the PDU, and it will not disrupt power to the devices plugged in. So no devices will go down. It's just simply restarting the network card. We do get a lot of cases asking that question, so I just want to make that clear for everyone. You don't have to worry about that. So while we wait for this to restart, that's obviously the first way to do that. So now I'll show you the second method, and that would be using SFTP. So there are plenty of different ways to do SFTP clients. I'm just going to use the Windows 10 basic one. So I've just pulled up a command prompt here. And as you can see, it'll be real simple. It's just a few commands. So we'll go ahead and put in SFTP for Secure File Transfer Protocol. And then we're going to want to make sure that we put the username or the user credential for an administrator account. All of this has to be done under administrative rights. So no power users or anything like that. It does need to be administrator. So I'm just using the default ADMN, which comes with most of the PDUs. And then I'm going to put @ and I'm going to pick the PDU, which we're going to do that on. And that's going to be 59. And we'll hit enter, and we'll allow that to connect to the PDU. Now you may receive an error here on the first time you do this, and it's not really an error. It's basically just going to ask you if it's okay to cache this known host, and that's always okay. You might have to put yes in there. I've obviously connected to this one, so I don't need to do that today. And then we'll put in the password, and it says we're connected. So that is the first step. The next step would be to issue a put command, and what that'll do is it's basically telling this PC to use SFTP to put the .bin file onto the PDU to upgrade the firmware. So we'll simply put in put, and then the directory path of which you'll find your .bin file. So mine, as I showed you earlier, is on the C. Just basically on the C drive, no other folders or anything like that. And once you have that in there, you'll hit enter. Now you'll see here, it'll say uploading, and it'll show you, it usually stays about 2% and installed. I think usually this takes about anywhere from 30 to 45 seconds for this transfer to actually happen. And if we just wait here just a moment, it should go through, and we'll make sure it says 100% uploaded. And then once it does show that 100% upload, that is when the network card will restart. So it'll take a few moments once again for that PDU to accept this firmware file and then restart the network card. So you'll want to wait. Obviously, it won't be reachable if you try to reach it through the web interface or SSH or any other things. And as you can see now, we do have uploaded 100%. So that's great. We've completed the firmware upgrade on both of these. If we go back to this one, I believe it should be done. Let's see here. We can do login, put in the credentials. And now, as you can see up at the top there, we have firmware Century Switched PDU version 8.0S. So that is both the methods that I wanted to show today on how to upgrade the firmware. So the next step, or the next portion of this webinar, I guess, would be to complete the additional steps if needed. And I say if needed because there's only a certain scenario for each one of these where you would probably want to make sure that you compute new SSH keys or generate a self-signed certificate regarding firmware. And that is for the certificate version. If any PDU you have is running firmware older than 8.0G, you will need to go ahead and regenerate new SSL certificates using the PDU. You'll need to do this in order to use HTTPS for all modern and major browsers. And the reason behind that is basically we changed the certificates to use a 2048-bit key and SHA-256 as the signature hash. So to comply, and we did that to comply with minimum security standards. So I think the next portion of this, I will go ahead and show you how to do that on both the web interface here on this PDU that we've just upgraded, and then I'll also show it on on the command line interface, which you can reach via serial, SSH, or telnet. I do want to note, if you are planning to try to do this through the command line interface via SSH or telnet, please do make sure you do have it enabled on the PDU. So once again, we'll go to this left side over here, and on the options menu, we want to look here and we want to go to tools. And then once we're in tools, we'll go to restart. And basically, again, this is doing a restart of the network card. However, we're going to have it complete an action for us at the same time. And as you can see, if you've never been to this menu before, there's quite a few options. You have restart, you have reset to factory defaults. This one, restart and download firmware via FTP. This actually goes back to method 3 on the instructions guide that I spoke of regarding the FTP server on your network. So we're going to ignore that as well. But the option we will select for this version is going to be the restart and generate a new X.509 certificate. And again, once we do this and I hit apply, it is going to ask you the same thing. Are you sure you want to restart? The outlets will not change state. So that, again, that's telling you you will not lose power to any devices, and hit OK to let it restart. So this is going to do the same thing it did last time. However, this does take a little bit longer. So we'll go ahead and we'll let that PDU regenerate the certificate that way. And while we do that, I will pull up a SSH session with another unit. I'm going to use PuTTY. You can use many different terminal emulators as long as it works with SSH or Telnet, one of the two protocols. That should be fine. So let's see here. Okay, so we have PuTTY here, and again, all of this I think I've already mentioned, but I just want to be 100% clear. Needs to be done under administrative credentials. So we'll just go ahead and log in as ADMN as we have done before, and this is on .59, which is the one that we just upgraded firmware on as well. So you can see that the Century Switch PDU version is 8.0S, and that was completed using SFTP. So here, you can basically understand that you need to restart to generate a new certificate. So we'll want to do a restart command, but what is the actual syntax for that? Well, we can use a question mark to go to the menu. Once at the menu, you'll see there's a few different options. And obviously, out of all those, I think the new X509 cert would be the one that we'll use here. So we'll just simply type that in and hit enter. That's going to tell you again, outlets will not change state. You hit yes, and that will tell you that now the PDU is going to restart and generate a new certificate. So either of these options are available to do this. They're both, again, quite simple. And the next portion of the webinar that I'm going to show is pretty much the same steps. We're just going to select a different option in both these scenarios. Now, one thing just so people can understand is that for the commands for the restart, if that's something that you don't use a lot or you're not familiar with the CLI, you can always jump over to our user guide, which can be found on support at our website, product manuals, and then as long as you're using a switched one for the Pro 1 and Pro 2 user guides, that'll allow you to understand and get to where you need to find the commands. So I've opened this one here and I've just searched X509, and here you can see the command syntax with the different options you have, and it gives you the descriptions. So of course, we just did the new X509 cert, creates a new self-signed SSL X509 certificate. And as well, the next step we're going to do is the SSH keys. So we'll go ahead and we'll pull up another PDU here. Let's see. Oh, wrong one. All right. Oops. If I can pull it up here. All right, sorry about that. So we'll log into this PDU. And again, just the administrative credentials. And simply as we did last time, you can go down to the same, you have the same options, the same menu. And you'll go to Tools and Restart. And so just to go over why, so if you are running a firmware version anything older than 8.0M, you will want to recompute SSH keys. And the reason behind that is in 8.0M, we went ahead and made some updates to where we changed the HMAC, the KEX, and the ciphers were updated. So if you're running anything older than that, this is an action you would want to take. And all you need to do is the same exact action, restart and compute new SSH keys, the same apply, and the same OK. Again, that will restart and begin computing the new SSH keys. This one does take a little bit longer than the others, so definitely give it some time. And then you're able to log back in, and everything should be working correctly. You shouldn't have any issues with SSH or the certificate at this point. So lastly, we can pull up another PuTTY session here. And we can do the same exact action using the command line interface. Again, if you prefer to do serial, SSH, or telnet, that is up to you completely. So we'll log in here. And again, we know that we're going to be doing a restart. So we'll do the restart question mark for the menu. And it looks like we want to use the restart new SSH keys. As before, same exact scenario we're going through. Are you sure you want to restart? Yes. And there you go. You've now done the same exact action using the command line interface as you have the web interface. So both of these options are available depending what is preferred in your environment and what's easier to you. So in summary today, we've covered completing firmware upgrades via SFTP and HTTPS using the web interface. And as well, we've generated a new self-signed certificate and SSH keys depending on the original firmware version. So like I said, if you had any of those firmware versions that I mentioned, you definitely want to complete these steps as well as the firmware upgrade. So with that, I'm finished with the procedural part of this webinar, and I think we'd be more than happy to take any questions about any of these topics. And I'll go ahead and I'll pass it back to Joel. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brandon. That was fantastic. A lot of good information there. And so I guess, one question for me is, what typically prompts, why would I need to upgrade my certificate? Is there sort of a time frame or an expiration on the certificates that come with the PDUs?
The certificates, they do last 10 years. They have a validity of 10 years. However, there are looking like there's going to be some changes in that depending on browsers and things like that. So today I was just kind of showing why you would want to upgrade regenerate the certificate based upon firmware, since we've changed that. Like I said, in 8.0, I think it was G, we did change some of the security settings on the certificate using the different SHA and as well as the 2048-bit.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So with that, I'm going to unmute everybody and give you an opportunity to ask any questions. Additionally, you can also type questions in the chat. If you do have questions, I just ask that you make sure your device that you're viewing this on is also unmuted. That way we can hear you. Okay. And I don't see any questions coming in at this time on chat. Just make sure we're all unmuted. Good. Okay. So Brandon, I guess you covered everything so well. We don't have any questions on this
Good to hear.
function or feature. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining. We appreciate you taking the time to understand this function and this feature. Hopefully, you could take some of this knowledge back to your environment and implement some of the things that you've learned here today. Going forward, we're going to be doing these on a monthly basis. So next month, more than likely, you'll get an update of what the next session will be. And this session is recorded and it will be on the ServerTech YouTube channel. And if you've registered, you'll get a link to that channel once this is published. Okay. So thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. And we hope to see you again soon next month. Thank you.